In this video, we'll have a quick walkthrough of ClickUp recurring task functionality and see how you can set it up inside your ClickUp workspace. Let's get started. Let's start first with how do we access ClickUp recurring tasks functionality. First, you need to log into your ClickUp account and open any of the lists that you have so you can select any of the tasks that you want to set up the recurring settings for. And now in my example, that's going to be the update weekly timesheet task. The way to access recurring settings is from where you set the due date to the tasks. So you can either access it from the list view over here by just clicking on the column for the due date and setting the due date and clicking on the set recurring here, or by opening any of the tasks and then clicking on the due date tab from within the task and clicking on set recurring from within there. When you have this pop-up window opened, you will see a couple of options here. The first drop-down technically asks us how often do we want this task to recur. So you can select from the options daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. You also have the days after, which simply tells you how many days after you complete your task do you want your next task to be due. So in this case, we can say, for example, we want this to be 14 days after we complete the task, so that the due date of the following task is going to be 14 days after the date of completion, not the date of the due date. The next option is custom. In custom, it gives you a little bit more flexibility to set up the recurring settings. You can select between the day, week, month, or year, and you can select how often. Do you want every 2 days? Do you want it happen every 2 weeks, every 3 months, every 2 years? And over here, if you select weeks or months, it's going to also populate different options. So you might want to look into, for example, for weeks, you might want to record every 2 weeks on Mondays and Saturdays. For example, for months, you might want to record on a specific date of the month, let's say on the 8th, or you can select by week and say, I want this to happen every 2 months on the first week of the month on Tuesdays. So this is how this custom functionality works. And if you select years, you can select the months, the date of the month, and then that's technically the same as if you were to do it from setting up from here yearly. As we go, and we can select any of the options here at the top. I'm going to go back to weekly, for example. Here on the right hand side, you will see a calendar view that shows you with the lights blue icons what are the recurring settings currently look like. So basically, if I save this recurring setting, my task is going to repeat on the 11th, 18th, 25th, 1st, 8th, and so on. So if you scroll down, you can see it over here. Now, another drop down that we have following the first drop down is the trigger of the recurring settings. What it simply tells you is, when do we need to recur the task? When do you want the next task to happen? In this case, we can set it for the status change. So when I update the status to closed or to done, I want the next set task, recurring task, to be created or to be updated. Or you can also have on a schedule. Now, what on a schedule simply means is when the due date of the task comes and it aligns with the recurring settings that you put in place. So meaning, if I have the due date on the 4th, my recurring settings are set weekly on Saturdays, right over here. Then if I have the due date for today, which is going to be today, for example, today comes, then the task is going to be recreated or updated to have the new due date for the 11th. Now, if I have the recurring settings set on Saturday of every week, but my due date for this week's task is going to be the 7th, I change it after saving the recurring settings, this functionality is not going to work, right? So the due date has to align with the recurring settings that you put in place. But it becomes extremely powerful if you don't want to lose your task, or if you haven't completed your previous task yet, but you already need to start working on the future task as well. And here at the bottom, we have a couple of options for us. Now, we can create new tasks when this trigger happens, or instead of reusing the same task and just updating the due date. It becomes very powerful if you want to report on this task or put some sort of a dashboard based on all the activities that you have in this list. And this way, every single task is going to contain a new update from you or your team members who are completing that task. Inside the options here, you can see all the different things that you can copy over into the following task that's going to be created. You can select these options and remove them from this list. I most of the time prefer to keep the options as it is right here, but again, it's going to depend pretty much on the workflow and the process that you have in place. I'm going to click on save. The recur forever setting might be useful if you don't want to recur this task forever. If you want to recur it only 16 times, let's say over here, or 6 times, it's going to show you 6 times in the calendar view. You will see 6 times as this task is going to recur, and then after that, that task is not going to recur anymore. So that recurring setting is going to be canceled essentially actually on the 18th of November. We can also change, instead of the number of times, we can say that we want to end this recurring settings on the 25th of October. So if I scroll a little bit up, you'll be able to see that it goes on the 7th, 14th, 21st, and then as after the 25th, following the 25th, we have that recurring setting. So again, it becomes very powerful when you do not want to recur this setting forever. Let's say you need to do a specific task for just a specific period of time, and after that you don't want it to recur anymore, and you don't want to remove it manually either. So this is the way to set it up. And the last option is you can update the status of the task. As your task recurs, you might want to update its status back to do. This is what I do most of the time, and becomes very helpful for you to get it back to the initial status, so you can again trigger the recurring setting by moving it back into closed or done status. Now, as soon as you've set up the settings that you have in mind for the recurring task, click on save over here, and as soon as you do this, you'll see a little loop icon shown inside the task, which will tell you that the recurring setting is applied. Now, what if I go in here? So in this example, I have on a schedule, I'll change it to close. I go and I update the task to close. I'm gonna have a new task created, and this task is gonna go into the close status. So I'm gonna close this task, and you can see the update weekly timesheet over here. I have the new due date set up for the task in here, and the recurring settings also applied to this task. I hope you enjoyed this quick walkthrough the ClickUp recurring tasks functionality. If you want to see a more detailed breakdown on ClickUp recurring tasks, check the links somewhere popping up on your screen now, and I'll see you in the next video very, very soon.